Hi. Hi, my name is Kim. I'm an alcoholic, and this is the safest place for me to be. Thank you so much, Phil, for having me. It's nice to be in Tennessee. Um, First, I want to tell you the most important thing that I've learned about me is that I got sober November 21st, 2004, and which still remains my home group in Fort Lauderdale, the dry dock. And I have some friends here. I just found out that are here tonight, and I'm so happy to see them. But I walked into the dry dock November 21st, 2004, absolutely terrified and broken, not on my own will, but because my family had had it. And I walked in, and I walked down the hall and opened up a very, very heavy door and peeked in, and there was too many people in there. And this Fort Lauderdale, that in Fort Lauderdale, that was my hometown, and I was terrified. And it might surprise you, but I was very egotistical, and I was sure that the whole town was paying attention to me, I guess. And and so concerned with myself. I mean, it's shocking that I peeked in there and I thought, oh my God, what will they say? And I thought, there's too many people in there, I can't take it. And I shut the door and I started heading back down the hall to leave. And a man came walking in and said, I think I had tears down my eyes. And he said, oh, where are you going? And I said, oh, I was going to go in there, but I was just frazzled. And I said, there was too many people in there. And he said, there's a smaller room, a smaller meeting right here. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, why don't you go in there? And I said, all right. And I opened up that very, very heavy door and I peeked in, and there was only 10 people, and I could see them all and I did not know them. So I slipped in, and there was a chair up against the wall, and I shoved myself in it and I sat down. And that was it. That began my journey. It chokes me up every time because because that day, I mean, I did not want to get sober. I did not want to get sober. My best plan was to keep on drinking or to get out of Dodge and just die. I was 35 years old and I had had it. And life was way too much for me, way, way, way many years. And I had found a solution for that. And it had brought me, and it worked for quite a while, but it had brought me down to the depths, and it no longer worked for me. It showed on the outside now. And because that solution had me looking haggard, it had me fighting everybody that was helping me. It had me not showing up at work. I used to be a good worker. I was no longer a good worker. They didn't want me there anymore. So I had to quit, and I had my own job, but I could barely do that. I could barely work for myself. But also, when you work for yourself, you can fire yourself in the middle of the day and start drinking, and then hire yourself the next day. That's the good news about that. Except for when the bills need to be paid, the money's not there. And then when you go running home, and you live with your parents, they have had it, and then you end up. Well, actually, what had happened was, for me, at that end of the year, my parents had tried very hard to deal with me for so long. And by then, they had it. And actually, I usually start my story off with that 4 months sober. I was dry. I went to pick up my very best friend, Lisa Walsh, who came to visit me. We grew up together in Fort Lauderdale. And I went to I never told her that I was getting sober that day that I walked into dry dock. So it was about the spring. She came to visit, and I went to pick her up. She lived in Orlando. I went to pick her up, And I was white knuckling it. And she jumped in the car and looked at me. She was visiting Fort Lauderdale. She jumped in the car and she looked at me and she went, "Wow, Kim, you look different." And I said, "I do?" Now, I did not want to tell her that I had quit drinking because everybody knew that I had a problem. Everybody knew by this time that things were going bad, very bad. And I was afraid. I'd never tried to quit drinking. People told me to slow down, but I knew that I was an alcoholic and that meant that I had to quit altogether. But I was afraid to tell her because I was tired of disappointing everybody and I was tired of disappointing myself and I was afraid that it wasn't going to stick. So she looked at me and said, "You look different. What have you been doing? Have you lost some weight?" And I got so excited inside. I turned to her and said, "I haven't had a drink in 4 months." And she said, "Holy cow, you're kidding me." And then she started to cry. And I said, "What are you crying for? Stop that." And I realized right there, the pain that you put, she was so tough because I didn't have alcoholism in my family, but she had it in hers. And I realized the trouble that I have caused her. We had our first drink together. We went to college together. We ended up living, and actually I went off to Boston. And then after, she went up and lived with me and she had to put up with in Boston when we both worked. We would come home from, I would say after work, she would have maybe a beer. And before you knew it, I had cognac in an iced tea glass. Not many people drink cognac in iced tea glass. And then you didn't see me anymore after 7 o'clock. Maybe you didn't see me till the next day or 2 days. And it was just terrifying for her, but nobody talked about it. So she said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, yes, yes." Because what we thought what was going to happen at that point with me, with someone like me, because at 21 years old, she found me dead and they resuscitated, she called 911 and they resuscitated me. And I was on, breathing. I woke up the next day with tubes down my throat and they thought that I had done drugs, but I was a straight up alcoholic. And that was the beginning at 21. And I was poisoned many, many more times. But so we thought that, I was going to end up in jail. I was going to end up dead, or maybe I'd kill somebody else. What was going to happen with this train wreck? And I said, "No, a DUI." And I said, "No, nothing." And she said, "Well, what happened? How are you sober? How are you going to make this stick?" And I said, we pulled over to this. I pulled over and I said, "Actually, what happened was finally, Jean and Doyle, that was my parents, they finally pulled me over the side and said that they were going to kick me out of the house and that this was it and that I was going to go live in a halfway house." And funny that of all the things that I was threatened with, for some reason at this day, at 35 years old, I could not live. I felt like I was dying inside. I was very ill in my stomach anymore. I was falling asleep in the middle of the day. I was marking the bottles thinking, why can't I stop? Why can't I stop at this much? I'm okay. I've stopped shaking. I don't want to drink anymore. And yet I'd finish that bottle and get another bottle. And some nights I'd finish all three. And then I was walking to the Walgreens for the gin, but I didn't know what that night was going to be. And I had started that in my early 20s. I knew by my early 20s what an alcoholic was, and I knew that that's what I was. And I knew by this time in my life that that had completely taken me. But I did not know what the doctor's opinion was going to teach me. I did not know that that was the allergy. But I did know that once I took that one drink, I could not stop. I didn't know that made me an alcoholic. I just thought that I was a complete jerk and that that I had to drink. I thought that was just an alcoholic. But anyways, my mother and father had told me that that day they pulled me aside and they sat me down. And this time, my mother's a hard, tough woman, and she said, and my dad usually doesn't say anything, but this time they sat me down, and my mother sat there and cried. And my father said, "We are kicking you out of the house. This is it. You either look up AA meetings and we're taking the hinges off the door. You can stay in the house. We're taking the hinges off the door. You are not to think of alcohol. You are not to if alcohol commercial comes on the TV, you're to change the channel." I mean, it was just insane. He went through all these crazy things, and you are to go. And we've talked to your godfather, who my godfather was in Alcoholics Anonymous, 33 years at the time, 37 years when he passed. And he says that you have to go to, we could send you to an halfway house. And I was like, no. And they said, then you are to go to an AA meeting every single day. And when you do, that's your ticket to spend the night in the house. So find the one that you're going to. And I said, okay. Now I had been to an AA meeting 5-6 years prior. I went to an AA meeting. I knew that I belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that because at 21 years old, I knew I was an alcoholic. I came home from college on a plane. I thought I was a big shot. I asked for a drink. She gave me that one drink, and then she gave me 2 drinks. And then I asked for 3, and she said, no, we only serve girls your size 2 drinks. And I had a heart attack. I had an hour and a half left to go. And I already knew that I did not start drinking unless I could keep drinking. One drink made me a caged animal, and I knew it. I did not know why, but I knew that. In high school, I drank differently. When I had that first drink, it set me free, but it also set my best friend free, Lisa. She loved it. We both felt free. We both felt prettier and tittier and more congenial. We both felt that. But she went around talking to everybody else. I got back in the line. And as soon as I got my beer, I got back in the line again. And it wasn't long before I realized that when I came to a keg party, I would be the one who was the pourer of the keg. Because then everybody came to me, and anytime I needed beer, I just put it right in. That was the smartest thing. And everyone said, oh, look at Kim. She's the nicest girl. She's like the host. She takes care of everybody. I thought, oh my God, they're ridiculous. I'm the smartest one because I needed to, and I didn't want to look like the goose in the line. So, and also I knew that I ordered drinks differently from everybody. I knew I was different from the very beginning. I walked up to the bar and I said, what do you have that has the most alcohol in it? And I heard Christy Giles and Kristen Doors order, oh, that pretty drink. What do you have that has that pretty flower in it when we went on our senior cruise? And what does that have that has the pineapple, all this kind of stuff? And I thought, what is wrong with these people? I said, what has the most alcohol in it? We're ordering shots. What has the most alcohol in it? Back there in the 80s, they said B52. I'll take 2. What do you have? Oh, I had that little Tom Collins. I was like, what the hell is that? The Long Island iced tea, I'll take 2. I have 2 hands. And I was just a little tiny girl. I did not know any better. That is what was the most natural thing for me to do. Run myself right into the ground. So that, I mean, that basically that's what happened. I absolutely, as soon as I had alcohol, that's how I ordered, that's how I went after it. I adapted and reshaped my life around alcohol, just like anybody else would find a dream. Kim, you're going to college. What do you want to do? Oh, you want to be a lawyer? Oh, you want to be a teacher? You want to study aerospace engineering? Wonderful. And then you just adapt and you apply yourself and you go for it. I drank alcohol and my life naturally adapted and reshaped for alcohol, just simply as that. When I went to college, I knew what I wanted to do, but naturally it just, when I look back, I realized that's what it did. The train had gone. I could not stop it. When 2 years later, when I could not handle it anymore, I left that college and came home. Before I knew it, I was in the hospital. Before I knew it, they didn't know what to do with me anymore. They sent me off to another college. It just went like that, blah, 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 blah. Somehow I stayed alive. Somehow I stayed alive to just end up going to the job, to go to the job, to come home, to drink, to come home, to drink, to go, that kind of thing. And now I find myself um, debilitated and in the car. So I'm sorry, I'm blabbing, but so so I'm in front of my parents and they said, you've got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's your ticket. And I looked at them and my belly really did hurt. It was extended and I was like just dead anymore. And I had given up. And I said, I'm sorry that I've disappointed you. I fought them all the time, but this time I said, I'm sorry I disappointed you. Um, I knew of all the kids that I was the one that they had some sort of hope for because I was the homecoming queen, which doesn't really mean crap, but I was the nice one of all of us. I was in high school, I was the sweet one. I was the best all around. I was Miss Fort Lauderdale High. I was the nice one. I was the sweet one. I was on the dean's list. I was I was supposed to be somebody. I was supposed to marry the nice man and have children. And that's not what I felt inside. I felt inside broken. And I told them, I feel broken. I don't know that I can be this person that you think I am. And you know what they said? Oh, silly you. Look at you. You're so cute. You have everything going for you. Go on with yourself. Don't be ridiculous. If you don't think, or people would just tell me, you'll marry a nice man. You'll have children. And I cried and thought, are you crazy? I'll ruin everyone's life. Because I was broken inside. And I knew it. So I told them, I finally said, and they finally listened. I put my hands up in the air and I said, I give up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have no hope. And my mom said, I'll hold your hope. You've got to do this, Kim. I'll hold your hope. So I looked up and I called like any good alcoholic was, and I called AA. And all of a sudden, the next day, when I actually hadn't had a drink, I got a little cocky the next day, and I talked to this nice man on the phone, and I said, "Listen, my parents are making me go to, I have to go to AA. I know I'm an alcoholic, but I don't know if I really want to quit drinking, but I have to live here for a while. And this is my plan. So I have to go to AA. Can you please tell me a meeting that I can go to around the house I mean, around the neighborhood. And he started to tell, he said, where do you live? And I told him, and he started to tell me one. And I said, wait, before you do, let me tell you a bit about myself. And the man started dying laughing. And he said, let me tell you where you're going to go. And maybe you can call me in a couple of weeks and tell me how you're doing. And I said, but I went to college and I don't. And he said, oh, in that case, why don't you go to the dry dock? They'll love you. And I said, okay. So, and of course, I know that means nothing, but off I went. But it turns out that was the place that I had gone to many years before. When I went in and I looked up a place about 27 years old, I knew that I knew I was an alcoholic, and I knew that the only people would say, Kim, you shouldn't be able to drink that much and still be standing. And I said, if I have any shot of pulling myself together and living, I knew that I had to quit drinking. But I couldn't. I tried. And I knew what an alcoholic was. I thought that what I knew was that once you started drinking, if you could not quit, if you could not stop, that meant that you were an alcoholic and that you had to quit altogether. And that if you wanted to do that, you had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, because my godfather was an alcoholic. So that's what I knew. I didn't understand that you really did the whole idea of it, but I knew that. And I would say, no, I can't slow down. If I'm going to quit, I will have to quit altogether, and I have to go to AA. And everybody would say, oh, Jesus, you don't have to be so dramatic, for God's sakes. But I knew. So one day off I went, and I sat there and I grooved to everyone's beat. I absolutely loved AA. I thought you all were brilliant. But at the end of the week, there was one problem. Friday. And I had some friends that called me, and I thought to myself, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I went out, and that was the end. And then at 35, when I was sick and suffering and had had enough, but still not totally enough, I walked in and I heard, even though I was dead and scared and I was going to walk out for the first time right then and there, those changes. Like when I said, I walked into that room and it scared me and I was ready to give up on myself, because I was so ready to give up on myself. I was done. And in my family, I couldn't commit suicide because there was suicide everywhere. I hate to say that because we're not allowed to talk about it in our family, because it is all around, and it's that big hush. But that's what you think. So many of us, that's what's looming over the head. And a lot of us, and to me anymore, it's not where you pick up a drink. It's, don't jump off the bridge. You have to have that. You got to be right. You got to be right in the head for two reasons: not to pick up in the drink and not to jump off the bridge. I'm a sick and suffering human being altogether. So I was not, now I forgot where I was. I was not, well, I really did lose my place. When I start talking about that, it makes me such a nervous wreck. I'm so sorry. When I have to think where I was. Okay. Let me take you back to where, when I was back let me take you back to the car. When I was back, when Lisa said to me, how did you end up, and what happened when you stopped drinking? And I told her that it was my parents. And my mom said, I told them that I had no hope. And Jean said that she will hold my hope. And I ended up going into Alcoholics Anonymous. Lisa was very, I was talking about suicide. Lisa had heard plenty of the cries of that too. And it had gotten so bad that I knew that I couldn't I wasn't going to pull the trigger, but in my crazy head, it had gotten so bad and so sick and suffering with alcoholism. I had the audacity to think that I was going to collect enough money, save enough money, that I was going to pay, collect. I don't know how much money I thought this was going to be, but I was going to collect enough money to pay somebody else to do it, and that I was going to pay somebody else to kill me, so that would look better on the family. That's how sick I was in my 20s. This girl who had everything going, but I didn't, because I was sick and suffering inside. I did have panic attacks by the time that I was 5 years old. I had what a lot of people did have, growing up. Some bad things happened. I I'm not even going to get into it all, but of course, but it was the sick and suffering times, and I didn't have any way to handle it, and I was twisted and broken. That was my solution. So, that was the only way I could deal with things, to just say I can't deal with it. I want out. So I told Lisa that, I had no hope. And she said to me, Kim, will you hold my hope? And I said, well, what for? And she said, this was her last time trying in vitro. Now, when we were 30 years old, we were both 35 years old, but when we were 30 years old, Lisa had cancer, and I was a complete total jerk, drunk best friend, and she was so good with me. But she she well, anyways, this was her second. That had ruined everything inside of her and whatever. So this is her second time trying to try. She just, I don't know how to explain it, but she was trying to get pregnant and she couldn't. So this was going to be her time. And could I hold her hope? And I said, yes, I will. And for the first time, it was what I had just learned in AA. I was in the big book where we were reading the big book, and we had just read, and we were just talking about how when you have a problem, that you were helping another person, and you were halving your problem. And I had not been a friend with Lisa for so long because I was just a drunk, and she had kept everything from me. So for the first time, here she was being my friend again, and I felt whole, if that makes any sense, and I felt good. and and then it allowed me. Now, I was so scared that I wasn't talking to anyone in AA. And my godfather said, Kim, you go into AA, you get yourself a big book, you go a big book meeting, you get yourself a whole meeting where your usual suspects, and you go there Monday through Friday, you get yourself a woman's meeting, you get yourself a, a sponsor. She's going to take you through the steps, and you read the big book, and you call me and tell you how it's going on. Do you hear me? I said, yes. This is what I heard. Kim, go to AA. Okay, I went. So I went to the big book, and I went to the big book study every single day, Monday through Friday. And Monday through Friday I went, and then I took Saturdays off because I don't know. Sometimes I would go to a meeting, but most of the meetings it was too mixed. It seemed like people were, I don't know. It was too much for me. So on Sundays I went to like a church meeting, and that I could go to. So, oh wait, hold on one second. When I held, I told you that I held Lisa's hope. Yes. So, oh, and she said to me, I'm sorry, she said to me, what are you doing to make this not drinking stick? And I said, I'm going to AA. And she went, what? And I said, no, it's wonderful. They're the most wonderful people in the world. And I do love them. And I'm so, so happy. She said, well, what do you have to do? And I said, I don't have to do anything. I just show up. You know, they've been doing this for years and years. And she said, really? And I said, yes. And she said, well, who's in charge? And I said, nobody's in charge. You just go. She said, well, what do you mean? And I said, that's the whole deal. You just go. Just this man. This is the funniest thing. You know, we've known each other since we're 12 years old. I'm trying to explain this to her. And I go, you just go. And we were in girls' clubs together and all this kind of stuff. And she goes, well, who's the person that's the president? I said, nobody's the president. You just pass around a book and you talk. And she said, what are you talking about? It's true. And she goes, but it helps you. And I said, yes. And I said, these two men got together a long, long time ago, and they both had a problem and they talked to each other. That's what they told me. And then they passed it on, and it got like wildfire all over the place. And they've all been together. And and this is what's been going on all along. I really think it's good. I'm a big history buff, so I got right into it right away. And she said, this is wonderful, Kim. You just stick to it. And I said, okay. And that was that. And well, that when I went and now I was telling her like I was so excited, and it sounded like I had gone and made friends, but I hadn't. I was terrified. Every single thing that you can possibly do in AA, I did wrong, but I didn't drink. And that is the biggest thing. And when they say, you know, but they told me to get a sponsor, but I was too frightened. I was too frightened to ask anybody anything. I still had this looming thing that all I had to do was get enough money to move away and that I would just die. I was just a broken person. But here's what happened. I was sitting in this meeting constantly, always at 3:30 all the time. And this man was sitting next to me. And he was speaking about wanting to just die. And I was noticing all around me that because these little things kept happening to me. I did not drink and I would show up. And by the way, my mom would say to me, did you get a sponsor? And I would say, I can't get a sponsor. And she said, why not? Bill told me you're supposed to get a sponsor. And I said, yeah, but he doesn't understand. They changed the rules. Thank God my parents didn't go to Al-Anon. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, the way they do it in Fort Lauderdale, because I swear to you, this is what I heard. You have to read the big book and you have to do the 12 steps. Then you're allowed to have a sponsor. And she went, oh. She said, well, then how are we going to help you? And I said, I'm dyslexic. I can't read yet. She said, well, how are we going to help you? And I said, well, I think I'm going to have to order the big book on tape. So she ordered it for me on tape. My mother also had decided that I was too heavy and that I needed to lose weight. And that when I lost weight, this would help me feel better about myself. And this would help me stay sober. So when I came home from the 5:30, I was to come right home, get on that treadmill, and work out for an hour. And then she had fat-free, sugar-free Jell-O for me. I was freaking nuts. So anyways, no wonder I couldn't think. So here I am. I wouldn't speak to anybody, but I kept coming back. And there was this man that I sat by in the back of the meeting by the sneakers. What do they say? By the sneakers, the loafers, and the slippers. But I was strong. I didn't drink, and I couldn't because I was going to end up at the halfway house. So I sat by Rick, who complained every day. He spoke for me. He complained every day that he wanted to die, and nobody paid any attention to him. They would let him speak, and I sat there and I would listen to him, and I kept waiting for them to tell him the solution. You know, someone to speak and tell him the solution, but nobody did. And this went on for a while. And then all of a sudden one day, Rick was gone. He didn't show up. And I sat there. I think, I don't know how long I had sober, 6 months or whatever, but Rick wasn't there. And I was devastated. And the next day, Rick wasn't there. And the next day, Rick wasn't there. And I sat there and thought, oh my God, he did it. And I was so sad. And I thought to myself, did that solve anything? No. And I thought about Rick's family and how sad they must have been. And Rick had a chance. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, Rick had a chance when he was here. He could have gotten better. But now he's gone. And what use is it? And for the first time, I heard the answer I was looking for. And for the first time, I let go of that Linus blanket. And I thought, I don't want to die. I just want to stop the pain. I just want to get better. Just a little bit of that struggle let go. Just a little bit finally, that understanding that I heard constantly. Get out of your own way, kid. Open, honest, and willing. All these things started slipping in. And I started hearing it. And then all of a sudden, the next week, guess who walked in the door? Rick comes walking in the door with a big smile on his face. Now remember, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm a little embarrassed, but remember, I am new. So what I'm saying to him is a little sassy, but I am new. And I've never spoke to this man, but he comes walking in the door, sits down in Rick's seat, and I look at him and I go, you're alive. And he goes, I know. And I said, well, what? My God, what happened? And he said, I had a heart attack. And I said, you had a heart attack? And he said, yes. And I said, oh my God, well, what happened? And he said, in the middle of the night, I just had a heart attack. And I called 911. And I said, wait. You called 911? And he said, well, yeah. And I go, you called 911. And I just started laughing. And he said, well, why are you laughing? And I said, you called 911. And he said, well, of course I did. And I said, Rick, I sat here for 2-3 weeks listening to you, wanting to die. And you called 911. I've been commiserating with you, waiting for the answer. You don't want to die. And he goes, what are you talking about? And he just looked at me and I said, nobody does. We're here to get better. I don't even want to anymore. And he said, no. And I said, no. He goes, oh my God. And I said, you called 911. And he goes, of course. I said, that's right, because you don't want to die. And he looked at me and he goes, well, not like that. I said, oh my God. This is Alcoholics Anonymous, isn't it? This is it. This is it. And this is me. And I remember going home going, my God, I am the hardest head person I know. It takes everything to get, I am the one. I am so hard-headed. I'm not listening to anyone. I'm sitting next to the sickest person in the room because I'm the sickest person in the room. I'm not listening to the smartest people in my life. But that story and that thing has stuck with me for so long. And it has opened up. When I look back at that, I realize that what I say in meetings means so much. I don't know who's listening to me. And then I used to feel so guilty and worry about what I say because it could affect somebody in so many different ways. And then forever and ever and ever, I used to look at Rick, who forever after that was so happy after he had that freaking heart attack and called 911 and lived. And and I used to tell him all the time, you called 911, you want to live. And he said, well, who wants to die like that? And I said, well, how the heck did you have what dreaming of? What is wrong with you? Only in AA. And it was these things. And so that little thing was what changed my perspective. Just that changed my perspective. And then I realized that I was sitting there without a sponsor. I needed a sponsor. That's why I was sitting next to somebody, the sickest man in the room. But I didn't know how to get a sponsor. And I was still too afraid. I was so worried, and I was walking up and down my street all the time. And the man on my street, one of the men on my street, his name was Eric. And he used to work with, he wasn't an alcoholic himself, but he used to work with, at his church, with alcoholics and drug addicts with outreach program. And he was also a Fort Lauderdale lifeguard. And prior to moving to Fort Lauderdale, he worked in New Jersey. He was very proud to say this, since he was a kid in New Jersey as a New Jersey lifeguard. His whole entire life, he was a lifeguard. And I told him when I got sober, when he knew I had just gotten sober, because we were having dinner at his house for the last 3 months, because Eric was dying of a type of bone cancer, and he had accepted it and we were having barbecues and everything like that. And even though the man was in so much pain, he was just living every day like that day was his last. So he used to say to me when I was walking up and down, I had so much anxiety. I was walking up and down the street all the time. He would say to me, hey, Kim, every once in a while he'd see me and say, hey, Kim, did you get that sponsor yet? And I'd say, no. And he'd say, okay, well, we're rooting for you. I hope you're doing well. And I'd say, yeah. And finally, one day he saw me and I was really, really in a disarray. And he put down the hose, and he came walking over and he said, can I join you? And I said, sure. And he came walking with me. I'm watching the time. I'm just going to tell you this last story. He came walking with me and he said, listen, I really feel like you are struggling with this harder than you need to. Don't you want to give up this fight? And I said, I don't really know. And he said, I think you do. And I said, I know. And he said something that I said, I know it's a let go and let God. And to me, that is what I feel like it is still to this day. Still to this day, 1 year, 2 year, 15 years, 17 years, every day when I get down on my knees and I pray, or I have to pray in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, it is let go and let God. It is the problem is me. The solution is letting go. Constantly. It's the cease to struggle. Every time I turn around, I'm in my own way. And that was one of the first things that I heard that I went, what the hell are they talking about? And that is the biggest thing that I face constantly. It's the problem is me. The solution is letting go. And this is where it turned for me. He said, Kim, cease to struggle. Just let go. And I said, I don't know how. I just don't know how. And he said, look, when I go out as a lifeguard, when I go out, it's inside. When I go out to save people in the water, when I swim out and people are out there drowning and they're flashing around in the water, and in that fight, I can't reach in and grab them because they will take me down. They'll take me down with them. And they also can't hear me because they're in the struggle. So I scream to them, settle down, so that I can say, so I can rescue you. They can't hear me. You know, when you're in an argument with, when you're so hot, you're so bothered, and someone comes in to try to give you some advice, you can't hear them. Anything that you say, anything they say, you will fight back. And before you know it, you're both in a fight. You'll take them down with you. You remember that. So I have to wait till they are absolutely exhausted. And I thought of me being 35 years old and walking into dry dock, and I was exhausted. And I had no hope. It was the only way I was ever going to walk in there. And finally, he said, when they're exhausted and they actually start and they look at me like, why aren't you helping me? I'm going to die. And they start to go down, then and only then can I reach in, grab them, and take them ashore. He said, those people in there are waiting for you to settle down so that you can hear them and they can help you. Don't you want to be saved? Don't you want to live? You have so much to live for, Kim. And I knew that I was looking at a man who was dying. And I knew that I was looking at a man that had just had ceased to struggle, that knew that he was dying. And he ceased to struggle. And he was living every hour and every minute with his wife and his kids and his everybody, and making it count. So I knew this man knew what he was talking about. And he came out as a lifeguard to me one last time to do his job and to give me that advice. And I heard it. And I took it back. And then I opened my heart and I opened my ears. And I was open, honest, and willing. And I saw that woman, Marge, walk in. And I saw her and I knew she was the one. And that woman is still my sponsor today. And I never picked up a drink. And I never had to go to that halfway house. And I'm sorry I didn't get to say the things I wanted to say. It's been an emotional week. I'm about to go to Ireland on Monday. I will end because I know the meeting's ending. Thank you so much for letting me share. I love AA. I'm not thrilled that I'm an alcoholic because I don't want a disease that I know this is a very serious disease and it has me completely. I don't want a disease that can take that I have to, like, every single thing I have to fight this for. I have absolutely the most respect for alcoholism. And if I slip, if something happens to me, I become I could take out a family. I don't care what happens to me. I care what I could do to other people. That's terrifying to me. I don't want that to ever happen. So I must remain vigilant. I am absolutely so grateful for everybody that has come before me and AA because it saved my life and my family's. So thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.